2026 Baggage Rules. Frequently asked questions. 1. What are the standard carry-on hand baggage rules in 2026? Most international airlines allow one carry-on bag sized roughly 5540 by 20 centimeters, 20 to 16.8 in, with a weight limit typically around 7, 10 kilograms, 15, 22 pounds. A personal item like a handbag, laptop bag, or small backpack may be allowed in addition, but this varies by airline. Some carriers, especially low-cost ones, are strictly enforcing these limits with laser sizes and weight checks at the gate. 2. How many carry-on bags can I bring? Depending on the airline and fare type, you may be allowed only one carry-on bag plus a personal item. Many low-cost carriers now only include one cabin bag in the base fare. Extras may require a fee. 3. What are checked baggage allowances? Checked baggage rules vary widely by airline, route, ticket class, and frequent flyer status. Some airlines include checked bags in the fare, others charge separately. As a general rule, the maximum weight per checked bag normally shouldn't exceed 32 kilograms, 70 pounds. Dimensions for checked bags, length plus width plus height, generally must be under about 158 centimeter, 62 in. 4. What about airline-specific allowances? Example India. Some Indian domestic flights allow about 15 kilograms checked baggage per passenger. For carriers like Indigo, a carry-on up to 7 kilograms and 115 centimeters total dimensions is standard. Rules differ for each airline. Always check your booking details. 5. Are there any weight limits for cabin bags? Yes, many airlines enforce a limit between 7 kilograms and 10 kilograms for cabin bags. Some airlines weigh cabin bags at check-in or at the gate. 6. What happens if my baggage is too large or heavy? Extra charges usually apply for oversized or overweight baggage. On some airlines, oversized carry-on baggage may be refused at the gate or must be checked for a fee. 7. Are liquids allowed in carry-on bags? Yes, but liquids must meet security screening rules, generally 100 milliliters per container and in a transparent 1-liter bag in many countries. Some airports allowing enhanced scanners may have updated liquid policies. Always verify at departure airport. 8. Can I bring special items like baby gear or assistive devices? Most carriers allow baby essentials or assistive devices, wheelchairs, crutches, free of charge in addition to your baggage allowance. 9. Do frequent flyers get extra baggage allowances? Yes. On many airlines, elite status members enjoy additional baggage allowance, extra weight, or extra piece. 10. Are baggage compensation rules changing in 2026? Some regions are updating compensation for delayed or mishandled baggage under international agreements, improving traveler protections. Quick tips before you fly. Always check your specific airline's baggage policy. Limits and fees differ by carrier, route, and fare type. Weigh and measure your bags before arriving at the airport to avoid surprises. Consider pre-purchasing extra baggage allowance during booking, usually cheaper than at the airport. Rule 2. Baggage allowance and responsibility. FAQ Rule 2. Q1. What does Rule 2 of the Baggage Rules 2026 deal with? Rule 2 explains how baggage allowance is determined and who is responsible for baggage during air travel. Q2. Who decides the baggage allowance for a passenger? The airline decides the baggage allowance based on type of ticket, economy, business, etc. Route, domestic or international. Fare category. The allowance must comply with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q3. Is baggage allowance the same for all passengers? No. Baggage allowance may vary depending on adult, child, or infant passenger, special passengers, defense personnel, diplomats, etc. Frequent flyer status. Q4. Who is responsible for checked-in baggage? Once baggage is checked in and accepted by the airline becomes responsible for its safe carriage until delivery at the destination. Q5. Who is responsible for cabin, hand, baggage? The passenger is responsible for the safety and security of cabin baggage at all times. Q6. Can an airline refuse to carry baggage? Yes, an airline may refuse baggage if it exceeds permitted weight or size. It contains prohibited or dangerous items. It is improperly packed. Q7. Is excess baggage allowed under Rule 2? Yes, excess baggage may be allowed on payment of prescribed charges, subject to aircraft capacity and airline policy. Q8. Does Rule 2 cover loss or damage of baggage? Rule 2 establishes responsibility. Compensation for loss, delay, or damage is governed by other relevant rules and international conventions. Q9. Can baggage allowance be changed after ticket booking? Yes, airlines may revise baggage policies, but changes must be communicated to passengers and comply with DGCA guidelines. Q10. Does Rule 2 apply to all flights? Yes, Rule 2 applies to domestic and international flights operated by airlines registered or operating in India, unless exempted. Rule 13. Free baggage allowance. FAQ Rule 13. Q1. What is Rule 3 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 3 deals with the free baggage allowance that a passenger is entitled to carry without paying any additional charges. Q2. What is meant by free baggage allowance? Free baggage allowance refers to the maximum weight or number of baggage items a passenger can carry free of cost, as permitted by the airline. Q3. Who fixes the free baggage allowance under Rule 3? The free baggage allowance is fixed by the airline, subject to regulations and directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q4. Is free baggage allowance the same for all passengers? No, it may vary based on class of travel, economy, business, first class, route, domestic or international, type of passenger, adult, child, infant, frequent flyer status. Q5. Does free baggage allowance include cabin baggage? Yes, free baggage allowance generally includes checked-in baggage, cabin, hand, baggage within prescribed limits. Q6. Can an airline reduce the free baggage allowance? Yes, airlines may revise free baggage limits, but such changes must be clearly informed to passengers, comply with DGCA guidelines, be reflected in ticket conditions. Q7. Is free baggage allowance transferable between passengers? No, free baggage allowance is personal to each passenger and cannot be transferred or pooled unless expressly permitted by the airline. Q8. What happens if baggage exceeds the free allowance? If baggage exceeds the free allowance, it is treated as excess baggage and additional charges are applicable. Q9. Are infants entitled to free baggage allowance under Rule 3? Yes, infants are generally entitled to a limited free baggage allowance as prescribed by the airline. Q10. Does Rule 3 apply to all airlines operating in India? Yes, Rule 3 applies to all airlines operating flights to, from, or within India, subject to exemptions notified by the competent authority. Rule 4. Checked baggage. FAQ Rule 4. Q1. What is Rule 4 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 4 deals with checked baggage, its acceptance by airlines, and conditions for its carriage. Q2. What is checked baggage? Checked baggage is the baggage handed over to the airline at check-in, which is carried to the aircraft hold and returned to the passenger at the destination. Q3. When does the airline become responsible for checked baggage? The airline becomes responsible after the baggage is accepted and a baggage tag is issued at check-in. Q4. Can an airline refuse to accept checked baggage? Yes, an airline may refuse checked baggage if it exceeds permitted size or weight limits, it contains prohibited or dangerous items, it is not properly packed or secured. Q5. Is there maximum weight limit for a single piece of checked baggage? Yes, generally, a single piece of checked baggage must not exceed the prescribed weight limit set by the airline in accordance with safety norms and guidelines issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q6. Can valuable items be carried in checked baggage? Passengers are advised not to carry valuables such as cash, jewelry, important documents, or electronic items in checked baggage. The airline may not accept liability for such items. Q7. Is identification tagging of checked baggage mandatory? Yes, checked baggage must be properly tagged by the airline, and passengers should retain the baggage claim tag until baggage is collected. Q8. What happens if checked baggage is delayed, lost, or damaged? The airline is liable to provide assistance and compensation as per applicable rules, airline conditions, and international conventions. Q9. Can a passenger access checked baggage during transit? Normally, checked baggage cannot be accessed during transit unless permitted by the airline or required by customs or security authorities. Q10. Does Rule 4 apply to both domestic and international flights? Yes, Rule 4 applies to all domestic and international flights operated by airlines under the applicable Indian aviation regulations. Rule 5. Cabin, hand, baggage. FAQ Rule 5. Q1. What is Rule 5 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 5 deals with cabin, hand, baggage, including its limits, safety requirements, and passenger responsibility. Q2. What is cabin, hand, baggage? Cabin baggage is the baggage carried by the passenger into the aircraft cabin and kept under the seat or in the overhead bin. Q3. Who is responsible for cabin baggage? The passenger is fully responsible for the safety, security, and contents of cabin baggage at all times. Q4. Is there size and weight limit for cabin baggage? Yes, airlines prescribe maximum size and weight limits for cabin baggage in accordance with safety standards and directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q5. Can an airline refuse cabin baggage at the boarding gate? Yes, an airline may require cabin baggage to be checked in at the gate if it exceeds permitted size or weight, cabin storage space is insufficient, it poses a safety or security concern. Q6. What items are prohibited in cabin baggage? Cabin baggage must not contain explosives, flammable items, or sharp objects. Dangerous goods prohibited under aviation security rules. Any item restricted by security agencies. Q7. Are liquids allowed in cabin baggage under Rule 5? Yes, but liquids must comply with aviation security restrictions, including quantity limits and packaging requirements imposed by airport security authorities. Q8. Can personal items be carried in addition to cabin baggage? Yes, airlines may allow one personal item, such as a handbag or laptop bag, in addition to cabin baggage, subject to airline policy. Q9. Is the airline liable for loss or damage to cabin baggage? Generally, the airline is not liable for loss or damage to cabin baggage, unless caused by negligence of the airline or its staff. Q thus. Does Rule 5 apply to all passengers and flights? Yes. Rule 5 applies to all passengers on domestic and international flights, subject to exemptions or special provisions notified by the competent authority. Rule 6. Excess baggage. FAQ Rule 6. Q1. What is Rule 6 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 6 deals with excess baggage, including conditions for its acceptance and the charges applicable when baggage exceeds the free allowance. Q2. What is excess baggage? Excess baggage means baggage that exceeds the free baggage allowance in terms of weight, size, or number of pieces permitted to a passenger. Q3. Is excess baggage allowed under Rule 6? Yes. Excess baggage may be accepted subject to availability of space, safety considerations, and payment of prescribed charges. Q4. Who fixes the excess baggage charges? Excess baggage charges are fixed by the airline in accordance with guidelines and directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation (DGCA). Q5. Are excess baggage charges refundable? Generally, excess baggage charges are non-refundable unless the flight is cancelled or charges are wrongly collected as per airline policy. Q6. Can excess baggage be refused by the airline? Yes. An airline may refuse excess baggage if aircraft weight or space limits are reached, the baggage poses safety or security risks, the baggage exceeds permissible dimensions. Q7. Can excess baggage be carried on a later flight? Yes. With passenger consent, excess baggage may be carried on a subsequent flight or sent as cargo, subject to airline policy. Q8. Does excess baggage include both checked and cabin baggage? Yes. Excess baggage may relate to checked baggage or cabin baggage exceeding prescribed limits. Q9. Is there a different rule for special items under excess baggage? Yes. Items such as sports equipment or musical instruments may be treated as special baggage and charged separately as per airline rules. Q thus. Does Rule 6 apply to domestic and international flights? Yes. Rule 6 applies to all domestic and international flights operated under the applicable aviation regulations. Rule 7. Special baggage. FAQ Rule 7. Q8. What is Rule 7 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 7 deals with special baggage, such as sports equipment, musical instruments, mobility aids, and other non-standard items. Q2. What items are considered special baggage? Special baggage may include sports equipment, golf kits, skis, bicycles, etc. Musical instruments, wheelchairs, crutches, and other assistive devices. Oversized or oddly shaped items. Q13. Is special baggage included in free baggage allowance? Not always. Some special baggage may be included within free baggage allowance, while others may attract additional or special charges depending on airline policy. Q4. Who decides the conditions for carrying special baggage? Conditions are decided by the airline in accordance with safety norms and directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation (DGCA). Q5. Can airlines charge extra for special baggage? Yes. Airlines may levy special handling or excess baggage charges for transporting special baggage. Q6. Are assistive devices for persons with disabilities treated as special baggage? Yes. Assistive devices are treated as special baggage and are generally carried free of charge, subject to airline and regulatory guidelines. Q7. Is prior information to the airline required for special baggage? Yes. Passengers are usually required to inform the airline in advance while booking or before departure. Q8. Can special baggage be carried in the cabin? In some cases, small musical instruments or delicate items may be carried in the cabin, subject to size limits and airline approval. Q9. Can an airline refuse special baggage? Yes. An airline may refuse special baggage if it poses safety or security risks, aircraft capacity or loading limitations exist, proper packing requirements are not met. Q thus. Does Rule 7 apply to all flights? Yes. Rule 7 applies to domestic and international flights unless specifically exempted. Rule 8. Dangerous and prohibited goods. FAQ Rule 8. Q8. What is Rule 8 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 8 deals with dangerous, hazardous, and prohibited goods that are not allowed in passenger baggage due to safety and security reasons. Q2. What are considered dangerous goods under Rule 8? Dangerous goods include items that may pose a risk to the aircraft, passengers, or crew, such as explosives and fireworks, flammable liquids and gases, corrosive substances, toxic or radioactive materials. Q13. Are dangerous goods allowed in checked or cabin baggage? No. Dangerous goods are generally prohibited in both checked and cabin baggage, except for limited items permitted under specific conditions. Q4. Who issues guidelines regarding dangerous goods? Guidelines are issued by aviation and security authorities, including directions from the Directorate General of Civil Aviation (DGCA), and must be strictly followed by airlines and passengers. Q5. Are batteries and electronic devices covered under Rule 8? Yes. Certain batteries, especially lithium batteries, are regulated and may be allowed only within specified limits and packing conditions. Q6. What happens if prohibited items are found in baggage? If prohibited items are detected, the item may be confiscated. The passenger may face penalties. Boarding may be denied in serious cases. Q7. Is the passenger responsible for prohibited items found in baggage? Yes, the passenger is responsible for ensuring that no prohibited or dangerous goods are carried in their baggage. Q art. Can airlines refuse carriage of baggage under Rule 8? Yes, airlines may refuse to carry baggage containing prohibited or undeclared dangerous goods. Q no. Are there any exceptions under Rule 8? Limited exceptions may be allowed for medicinal items, medical equipment, personal use items, subject to quantity limits and prior approval. Q thus. Does Rule 8 apply to all passengers and flights? Yes, Rule 8 applies to all passengers on domestic and international flights without exception. Rule 9. Liability of airline for baggage. FAQ Rule No. Q8. What is Rule 9 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 9 explains the liability of the airline in case of loss, delay, damage, or destruction of baggage. Q though. When is the airline liable for baggage? The airline is liable when checked baggage is lost, damaged, delayed, or destroyed while under its custody. The incident occurs during air carriage. Q13. Is the airline liable for cabin baggage? Generally, the airline is not liable for cabin, hand, baggage, unless the loss or damage is caused due to the negligence or fault of the airline or its staff. Q4. What is meant by loss of baggage? Baggage is considered lost when it cannot be traced within the prescribed time limit after arrival at the destination. Q5. What is meant by delay of baggage? Delay occurs when baggage is not delivered to the passenger at the destination on time, but is delivered later. Q6. Is there a limit on airline liability under Rule 9? Yes, airline liability is subject to monetary limits as prescribed under applicable laws, rules, and international conventions. Q7. Does passenger negligence affect airline liability? Yes, if loss or damage occurs due to improper packing, inclusion of prohibited items, passenger's own negligence, the airline's liability may be reduced or excluded. Q8. Is compensation automatic under Rule 9? No, compensation is paid after verification, and passengers may be required to submit baggage claim tag, written complaint within the prescribed time. Q no. Who regulates airline liability for baggage in India? Airline liability is regulated according to directions and limits notified by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, and applicable international agreements. Q thus. Does Rule 9 apply to both domestic and international flights? Yes, Rule 9 applies to all domestic and international flights subject to applicable conventions and notified exemptions. Rule 10. Compensation and claims for baggage. FAQ Rule thus. Q8. What is Rule 10 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 10 deals with compensation and the procedure for making claims in case of loss, delay, damage, or destruction of baggage. Q though. When can a passenger claim compensation under Rule 10? A passenger may claim compensation if checked baggage is lost, damaged, or destroyed. Delivery of checked baggage is delayed beyond the prescribed time limit. Q13. Is compensation payable for cabin baggage? Compensation for cabin baggage is payable only if the loss or damage is due to negligence or fault of the airline. Q4. How should a baggage claim be made? The passenger must report the issue to the airline immediately or within the prescribed time. Submit a written complaint or claim form. Produce the baggage claim tag and travel documents. Q5. Is there a time limit for filing a baggage claim? Yes. Claims must be filed within the time limits prescribed by the airline and applicable regulations. Q6. Is there a maximum limit on compensation? Yes. Compensation is subject to maximum limits prescribed under applicable laws, rules, and international conventions. Q7. Can an airline deny a baggage claim? Yes. A claim may be denied if the claim is time-barred, loss resulted from passenger negligence, prohibited or undeclared items were carried. Q8. Does interim relief apply in case of baggage delay? Yes. Airlines may provide interim assistance or expenses in case of baggage delay, as per their policy. Q no. Who oversees baggage compensation rules in India? Baggage compensation rules are monitored in accordance with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q thus. Does Rule 10 apply to all flights? Yes. Rule 10 applies to all domestic and international flights unless specifically exempted by notification. Rule 11. Time limits for complaints and claims. FAQ Rule 11. Q8. What is Rule 11 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 11 prescribes the time limits within which passengers must report and file complaints or claims related to baggage issues. Q though, why are time limits important under Rule 11? Time limits ensure prompt investigation by the airline, preservation of evidence, fair and timely settlement of claims. Q13. What is the time limit for reporting damaged baggage? Damage to checked baggage must be reported immediately on receipt or within the prescribed period specified by the airline and applicable rules. Q4. What is the time limit for reporting delayed baggage? Delayed baggage should be reported as soon as possible, and a written complaint must be submitted within the notified time frame. Q5. When is baggage treated as lost for claim purposes? Baggage is treated as lost when it is not traced within the period prescribed by the airline or applicable regulations. Q6. What documents are required while filing a claim? Passengers are generally required to submit baggage claim tag, boarding pass and ticket, written complaint or claim form, proof of loss or damage if required. Q7. Can a claim be rejected for late submission? Yes. If a claim is not filed within the prescribed time limit, the airline may lawfully reject it. Q8. Does Rule 11 apply to cabin baggage? Yes, but claims for cabin baggage are considered only if airline negligence is proved and must also follow the prescribed time limits. Q9. Who issues guidelines regarding claim timelines in India? Guidelines are issued in accordance with directions of the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, and applicable legal provisions. Q10. Does Rule 11 apply to all passengers and flights? Yes, Rule 11 applies to all passengers on domestic and international flights, subject to applicable exemptions. Rule 12. Declaration of value of baggage. FAQ Rule 12. Q1. What is Rule 12 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 12 deals with the declaration of value of baggage by a passenger for the purpose of enhanced liability and compensation. Q2. What is meant by declaration of value? Declaration of value means declaring the higher monetary value of baggage contents to the airline at the time of check-in. Q3. Why should a passenger declare the value of baggage? Declaration allows a passenger to seek higher compensation in case of loss, damage, or destruction. Protect valuable items carried in checked baggage. Q4. Is declaration of value mandatory under Rule 12? No. Declaration of value is optional and is required only if the passenger wants compensation beyond the standard liability limits. Q5. When should the value of baggage be declared? The value must be declared at the time of check-in and before acceptance of checked baggage by the airline. Q6. Can an airline charge extra for declaration of value? Yes. Airlines may charge an additional fee for accepting baggage with declared higher value. Q7. What happens if the value is not declared? If no declaration is made, compensation for loss or damage will be limited to the standard liability amount prescribed under applicable rules. Q8. Are all items eligible for declaration of value? No. Certain items such as cash, jewelry, negotiable instruments, or prohibited articles may not be accepted for declared value. Q9. Who regulates the rules relating to declaration of value in India? These rules are regulated as per directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, and applicable legal provisions. Q10. Does Rule 12 apply to all flights? Yes. Rule 12 applies to domestic and international flights unless specifically exempted by notification. Rule 13. Combined carriage of baggage. FAQ Rule 13. Q8. What is Rule 13 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 13 deals with combined carriage of baggage, where baggage is transported by more than one airline under a single journey. Q2. What is meant by combined carriage of baggage? Combined carriage means a situation where a journey involves two or more airlines and baggage is checked through to the final destination. Q3. Who is responsible for baggage in combined carriage? Each airline is responsible only for the portion of the journey during which the baggage was under its control. Q4. Against which airline can a passenger make a claim? A passenger may make a claim against the airline during whose carriage the loss, damage, or delay occurred, or the first or last airline involved in the combined carriage, as permitted under applicable rules. Q5. Does free baggage allowance change in combined carriage? Free baggage allowance is generally governed by the policy of the first or most significant airline, unless otherwise agreed. Q6. Are baggage tags and documents important in combined carriage? Yes. Passengers must retain baggage claim tags, boarding passes and tickets to support any future claims. Q7. Can airlines deny responsibility in combined carriage? No. Airlines cannot deny responsibility merely because multiple carriers are involved, but liability is limited to their respective segments. Q8. Do international conventions apply in combined carriage? Yes. Combined carriage is governed by applicable international air carriage conventions along with national rules. Q9. Who oversees combined carriage baggage rules in India? Oversight is exercised in accordance with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q10. Does Rule 13 apply to both domestic and international journeys? Yes. Rule 13 applies to domestic and international journeys involving more than one airline. Rule 14. Right of recourse. FAQ Rule 14. Q8. What is Rule 14 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 14 deals with the right of recourse, which allows an airline to recover compensation paid from any person or entity responsible for the loss, damage, or delay of baggage. Q2. What is meant by right of recourse? Right of recourse means the legal right of the airline to claim reimbursement from its employees, agents, ground handling agencies, other responsible third parties, after paying compensation to the passenger. Q13. Does Rule 14 affect a passenger's right to compensation? No. Rule 14 does not reduce or affect the passenger's right to claim compensation from the airline. Q4. When can an airline exercise the right of recourse? An airline may exercise this right when compensation has been paid to the passenger and the loss or damage was caused by another responsible party. Q5. Is the passenger involved in the recourse process? No. The recourse process is between the airline and the responsible party. The passenger has no further obligation once compensated. Q6. Can an airline recover compensation from another airline? Yes. In cases of combined carriage, an airline may seek recourse against another airline responsible for the baggage incident. Q7. Does Rule 14 apply to domestic and international flights? Yes. Rule 14 applies to both domestic and international flights, subject to applicable laws and conventions. Q8. Is the right of recourse automatic? No. The airline must establish fault or responsibility of the concerned person or entity to exercise the right of recourse. Q9. Who regulates the application of Rule 14 in India? The application of Rule 14 is governed in accordance with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, and applicable legal provisions. Q10. Why is Rule 14 important? Rule 14 ensures passenger rights remain protected. Airlines can enforce accountability. Fair allocation of responsibility for baggage-related issues. Rule 15. Application and interpretation of rules. FAQ Rule 15. Q1. What is Rule 15 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 15 deals with the application and interpretation of the Baggage Rules 2026. Q2. To whom do the Baggage Rules 2026 apply? These rules apply to all airlines operating flights to, from, or within India. All passengers carried by such airlines, unless specifically exempted. Q3. How are these rules to be interpreted? The rules must be interpreted in a manner that ensures passenger protection, maintains aviation safety and security, aligns with applicable laws and international conventions. Q4. What happens in case of conflict between these rules and airline conditions? In case of any inconsistency, the Baggage Rules 2026 prevail over airline conditions of carriage. Q5. Can airlines frame their own baggage policies under Rule 15? Yes, airlines may frame policies, but such policies must be consistent with these rules, in conformity with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q6. Who has the authority to issue clarifications on these rules? The DGCA or the central government may issue clarifications, directions, or guidelines for effective implementation. Q7. Do international conventions override these rules? International conventions apply where applicable, but these rules govern matters not expressly covered by such conventions. Q8. Are these rules binding on passengers? Yes, passengers are bound by these rules once they accept carriage by air under the applicable conditions. Q9. Can exemptions be granted under Rule 15? Yes, exemptions may be granted by the competent authority through official notification, subject to conditions. Q10. Why is Rule 15 important? Rule 15 ensures uniform application of baggage rules, legal clarity and consistency, balanced rights and responsibilities of passengers and airlines. Rule 16. Power to issue directions. FAQ Rule 16. Q1. What is Rule 16 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 16 empowers the competent authority to issue directions, guidelines, or instructions for effective implementation of the Baggage Rules 2026. Q2. Who has the power to issue directions under Rule 16? The power is exercised by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, or any other authority authorized by the central government. Q3. Why are directions issued under Rule 16 necessary? Directions are necessary to clarify provisions of the rules, address practical or operational issues, ensure uniform implementation by airlines. Q4. Are directions issued under Rule 16 binding on airlines? Yes, directions issued under Rule 16 are mandatory and binding on all airlines to which the rules apply. Q5. Can directions issued under Rule 16 affect passengers? Yes, such directions may prescribe baggage limits, procedures for claims, operational requirements, which passengers are required to follow. Q6. Can Rule 16 directions override airline policies? Yes, directions issued under Rule 16 prevail over airline policies in case of inconsistency. Q7. Are directions under Rule 16 permanent? Not necessarily. Directions may be temporary or permanent, modified, withdrawn, or replaced as required. Q8. How are Rule 16 directions communicated? Directions are generally communicated through official circulars or notifications, published guidelines or advisories. Q9. What happens if an airline does not comply with directions under Rule 16? Non-compliance may result in regulatory action, penalties, suspension, or other enforcement measures as prescribed by law. Q10. Why is Rule 16 important? Rule 16 ensures effective enforcement of baggage rules, regulatory flexibility, protection of passenger interests. Rule 17. Power to remove difficulties. FAQ Rule 17. Q1. What is Rule 17 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 17 empowers the central government to remove difficulties arising in the implementation of the Baggage Rules 2026. Q2. What does removal of difficulties mean? It means issuing orders, clarifications, or measures to address practical problems, ambiguities, or unforeseen issues while applying the rules. Q3. Who can exercise the power under Rule 17? The power is exercised by the central government, often in consultation with the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q4. Why is Rule 17 necessary? Rule 17 ensures that implementation problems do not delay passenger relief. Legal or operational gaps are promptly addressed. The rules remain workable in real-world situations. Q5. Can orders under Rule 17 change the main rules? No. Orders under Rule 17 cannot amend or override the core provisions of the Baggage Rules 2026. They can only facilitate their implementation. Q6. Are orders issued under Rule 17 binding? Yes. Such orders are binding on airlines and authorities to whom they are addressed. Q7. Can Rule 17 orders affect passengers' rights? They may clarify procedures, but cannot reduce or take away rights already provided to passengers under the rules. Q8. How are Rule 17 orders issued? Orders are issued through official notifications, government orders or circulars, and are published for public awareness. Q9. Is there a time limit for exercising power under Rule 17? Yes. The power to remove difficulties is generally exercised within a prescribed period from the commencement of the rules. Q10. Why is Rule 17 important? Rule 17 ensures smooth implementation of baggage regulations, legal certainty, effective protection of passenger and airline interests. Rule 18. Repeal and savings. FAQ Rule 18. Q1. What is Rule 18 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 18 deals with the repeal of earlier baggage-related rules and the saving of actions taken under those rules. Q2. What does repeal mean under Rule 18? Repeal means that earlier baggage rules or provisions corresponding to these rules cease to apply from the date the Baggage Rules 2026 come into force. Q3. What is meant by savings in Rule 18? Savings means that actions taken under the old rules, such as permissions, directions, penalties, or proceedings, remain valid as if they were taken under the new rules. Q4. Are previous baggage claims affected by Rule 18? No. Baggage claims, proceedings, or investigations initiated under earlier rules continue and are not invalidated by the new rules. Q5. Do airline policies approved under old rules remain valid? Yes. Existing airline baggage policies approved earlier continue to remain valid until modified or replaced under the Baggage Rules 2026. Q6. Does Rule 18 protect passengers' existing rights? Yes. Rule 18 ensures that passengers' rights and liabilities accrued under previous rules are protected and not adversely affected. Q7. From when do the Baggage Rules 2026 apply? They apply from the date of commencement notified by the central government. Q8. Who ensures transition from old rules to new rules? The transition is overseen by the competent authority in accordance with directions issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q9. Can new directions be issued during the transition period? Yes. Authorities may issue clarifications or directions to ensure smooth transition and consistent application. Q10. Why is Rule 18 important? Rule 18 ensures legal continuity, smooth transition to the new rules, protection of ongoing cases and rights. Rule 19. Power to amend and issue notifications. FAQ Rule 19. Q1. What is Rule 19 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 19 provides the power to amend the rules and issue notifications for their effective operation. Q2. Who has the power to amend the Baggage Rules 2026? The central government has the authority to amend the rules by issuing official notifications in the Gazette. Q3. Why is Rule 19 necessary? Rule 19 ensures the rules can be updated with changing aviation needs, alignment with international standards and conventions, timely response to operational or technological changes. Q4. Can amendments under Rule 19 affect passenger rights? Yes, but amendments must be lawful, notified officially, and generally aim to enhance clarity, safety, or passenger protection. Q5. Are airlines required to follow amendments immediately? Yes. Once an amendment is officially notified, airlines must comply from the effective date mentioned in the notification. Q6. Can notifications be issued without amending the main rules? Yes. Notifications may be issued to clarify procedures, prescribe formats, limits, or timelines, without changing the core provisions of the rules. Q7. Who assists the government in implementing amendments? Implementation and oversight are carried out with the support of the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. Q8. Are passengers informed about amendments? Yes. Amendments and notifications are published officially and airlines are required to inform passengers through updated conditions of carriage or advisories. Q9. Do amendments apply to ongoing journeys or claims? Generally, amendments apply prospectively unless the notification expressly provides otherwise. Q10. Why is Rule 19 important? Rule 19 ensures flexibility and relevance of baggage regulations, legal certainty through formal notifications, continuous improvement of passenger and airline obligations. Rule 20. Power to make regulations and issue guidelines. FAQ Rule 20. Q1. What is Rule 20 of the Baggage Rules 2026 about? Rule 20 empowers the competent authority to frame regulations, guidelines, or standard procedures to carry out the purposes of the Baggage Rules 2026. Q though, who can make regulations or issue guidelines under Rule 20? Regulations and guidelines may be issued by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, or any authority authorized by the central government. Q3. Why is Rule 20 important? Rule 20 ensures detailed operational clarity, uniform implementation across airlines, alignment with safety, security, and passenger protection objectives. Q4. Are regulations and guidelines under Rule 20 legally binding? Yes, once issued in accordance with law, such regulations and guidelines are binding on airlines and relevant stakeholders. Q5. Can Rule 20 guidelines affect passengers? Yes, guidelines may prescribe baggage limits and procedures, documentation and claim processes, safety and security requirements, which passengers must follow. Q6. Do Rule 20 regulations override airline policies? Yes, in case of inconsistency, regulations or guidelines issued under Rule 20 prevail over airline policies. Q7. Can regulations under Rule 20 be modified? Yes, they may be amended, updated, or withdrawn from time to time to meet changing operational or regulatory needs. Q8. How are Rule 20 regulations communicated? They are communicated through official notifications or circulars, published guidelines and advisories. Q9. What happens if an airline violates regulations issued under Rule 20? Violation may lead to regulatory action, penalties or enforcement measures, as prescribed under applicable aviation laws. Q thus. Why is Rule 20 the concluding provision? Rule 20 provides the enabling mechanism to ensure that all provisions of the Baggage Rules 2026 are effectively implemented and updated when required. Subscribe for regular updates and expert content. Knowledge grows when you subscribe. Subscribe to learn something new every day.